Excellent, and welcome to the TAD Summit online conference. We have the number two session, and this is going to be focused on from the trenches on RCS. So we have Michael Lamb here from Native Message. Really happy that Michael's able to join. Michael, do you want to provide a quick introduction?
Sure. So, my name is Michael Lamb, and I'm the president and co-founder of Native Message. And Native Message is a built from the ground up RCS business messaging solution. We also have multiple patents in the US around RCS. We were actually just issued our fourth patent a week or two ago. And in the
Congratulations.
process of, thank you, of trying to secure some more IP. But my background is really in text messaging. I started a text messaging company in Chicago in 2003 because I was in between opportunities and needed to find a way to figure out where the dollar beers and the dollar cheeseburgers were. So the whole concept of text messaging and short codes and all of that was introduced to me back then, and have been involved with messaging ever since. And, 20 years later, it's supposed to go away because everything else was supposed to kill it. And here we are talking
Yep.
about messaging, and not only messaging, but a new form of messaging. So,
Exactly. No, that's
yeah.
a very good point. I remember seeing analyst projections on the end of SMS like
Oh,
back
yeah.
in the noughties, not even the teens, like almost, well, it would be, yes, 20 years ago, that it would be removed by all these IP things. And it's, why would something need, as universal as a text message, as broad-based? But anyway, so what's going to happen is Michael's going to do a presentation. So this is, but of course, given our audience, we have Mark A, we have Noah Rafalco, we have Johnny Toroni. So there will be a lot of fun discussions because I think we're at a very interesting time with RCS. And what I love about what Michael does is when you have a conversation with Michael about RCS, it's just from the gut. It's truth. It's frank. It's to the point. There's no fluff. That's what I love about the conversations. So that's why I was so keen that we get Michael here. Now, of course, I've been introducing Michael to a number of TADS community members. Paul, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. Just made it in time. But Michael, the floor is yours.
So thank you, Alan, and thank you very much for having me on, and to be able to be with this wonderful group of gentlemen also as well. It's a pleasure and a treat. So really, I'm not going to pull up a bunch of slides and bore everybody with all that kind of stuff. Everybody's seen all the slides and all of this and the that and the whatever. But really, today I want to talk about RCS, really RCS business, kind of what we're seeing in the marketplace, kind of a snapshot of where things are currently, and then some of the other items, as they come up. So I don't want this is very informal.
Yeah.
Jump in, everybody asks questions. Tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right. I'm all about it. I'm just here for the discussion and to share what I've learned over the past 7 or 8 years. And I say that because to start the conversation, we got involved in RCS in 2018. And back then, it was supposed to launch in the US. There was a CCMI that was put together with the goal of hoping that T-Mobile, Sprint, and AT&T could get along and agree on some things. As far as moving forward, I know there was a vendor that was brought in, and clearly, obviously, that didn't work. So if you can imagine, my co-founder and I spent all of this time, effort, energy, and money to build out an entire software platform for a market that never materialized. So that was fun. After that, it was, how do we re-engineer the software? We got into Google Business Messages a little bit. We did something called conversational ads. And then we worked on a couple of other more conversational types of experiences and channels and things like that. And that was really where our focus was. And native message really was started, even before RCS, and around 2016 is when we started thinking about it, because that's when two-way messaging in the US was starting to gain in pop. Like, how do we message a business? How does a business message us? Right. And we realized doing that at scale is impossible. So there has to be tools that sit behind that automate those processes and all of that. And that was kind of the genesis around native message and where native message started. So now we fast forward past 2018, 2019, COVID, going through that, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, maybe a little less, RCS kind of popped up on the radar again. And we were always, RCS, knew that we believed that it was going to happen and that there was potential for it in the places where it was going to launch. So, like I said, then RCS started popping up again. You had Google coming in, obviously, and Google setting everybody up. In the US, you had AT&T agree to Google, then T-Mobile, then Verizon, right? So then we started seeing all these pieces starting to come together, specifically in the US market, with everything happening globally. And then went all back in on RCS. And then since then, I would say probably in the last 4 months, let's call it 4 to 6 months, we have seen demand literally explode. And I think that the demand is really coming from, and this is global demand, right? This is not US brand demand. How do I figure out how to send an RCS business message? This is, I am already sending SMS and MMS, and we did not invest in RCS, which, as a side note, makes a ton of sense, right? If you have a business and you have salespeople, and those salespeople are compensated for selling a product, and that product is volume based, and that's how they get paid, and there isn't a lot of volume, how do you compensate those salespeople, right? How do you figure out where you're going to take your investment dollars and put your investment dollars? So a lot of people we are seeing up and down the food chain did not make that investment.
Yeah.
So then you have my co-founder and I, Brian, who are the crazy entrepreneur guys who did, with the hope and the dream that it was all going to play out. It was all going to come together. And eventually all of this time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears that we've put into all of this would pay out. And that is what we are starting to see now, because on a global basis, we are talking to companies like at the top of the food chain all the way down to the bottom of the food chain, because there's a lot of confusion around RCS business.
Yeah.
And there's so many different pieces to it. And we'll get into that in a little bit around, the agent and registering the agent and the different requirements in the different countries and who's verifying, all of this kind of stuff.
Cool.
But what we are hearing and what is out there is really people who now know that RCS is important, whether it's a priority, number one, number two, number three, right? Still to be determined, I think, for some people because of the revenue part of it. But I see all of that coming, and it will come very quickly. But they're really looking for guidance and solutions. And how do you help us with our strategy? And what should a strategy be? And really, it's almost like we're on these calls, and on the other side, they're like, we have no idea. We know what it is. We know that there's a platform that the carrier needs. We know there's devices. We know that, but how do all of these pieces fit together? Because you have this universal profile, which, if you're a non-technical person, is 300 pages of, I looked at the new one and I understand it at a base level, but there's a lot there. It's confusing. It's complex. There's a lot of different moving parts and pieces. And really what we are trying to do is simplify all of it and make it very, very easy for people to get up and running with RCS business messaging. And we're doing that by providing a no-code solution and an API solution. And our no code solution runs on our API. So all the functionality and features and all of that kind of stuff is all there. And I should put out there, I am not the technical person by any means. I know how everything connects together and how it talks to each other. But as far as like what happens under the hood and this thing and that thing, and well, I don't bother myself with it because I don't need to really understand it.
Cool.
So from that perspective, there is, a lot of demand on the, what I would call the solution side. So if you think about the telecom space and you think about messaging, before RCS, the problem was, how do I get this 160 characters from point A to point B? It was all about transport and all about termination and delivery. And that is what this whole industry, from a wholesale messaging, from a text messaging, right? It's all built upon that piece of getting this from point A to point B. And that's still coming up, because when I have conversations with people about RCS and I show them this great solution and all these demos and how crazy it is and wow, and oh my, this care and all this other, the first question I get is, how much is a message? And I'm like, how much is a message? Well, how much, like, what about everything I just showed you over here? So then we started to think about that from that perspective, because that's so ingrained inside of the industry that everything is price driven, cost driven, transport driven. How much is a message? We're all going to go after each other's customers and drop prices this little bit and that little bit to make this little margin or whatever it is. And that's not what RCS business is at all, in any way, shape, or form. So I think the industry as a whole, and I know there's conversations that are happening around all of this, and it's difficult because the customers have also been taught that this is a price-driven industry also, right?
Yeah.
But RCS business isn't and shouldn't be, because it's not really, right, messaging.
Yeah.
Really what you're doing is you're building applications. And those applications then exist and live inside of the text messaging app on the phone. So you have a contact now that is a business that lives inside of the text messaging app on your device. So you think Google Messages and iMessage, right? That's all you need for RCS business messaging. It's carrier agnostic, network agnostic. Oh, it's agnostic across the board because it's supported as a protocol the same way SMS and MMS is inside of those two messaging apps. So if the whole industry continues down this path of how much is a message, how much is a message, it's like selling a Volkswagen and a Rolls Royce for the same price, and everybody's going to go and buy the Rolls. Like, it doesn't.
But there's definitely a lot more Volkswagens than there is Rolls Royces. And it's just like a box of eggs or anything else. So without pricing, it's money. Without money, nothing works. How do the operators get paid? How do the aggregators get paid? How do you bill for it? Without that, unless Google just comes in and just keep paying everybody so they can farm all the content and data like they do with everything else and take over the world that way, I don't understand how pricing is not the most important thing. But again, you have Noah Rafalco, you've got Mark Hay. I'm a technical guy. You got Paul Sweeney. I just had to interject. It's all about pricing.
Please.
It's all about pricing.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
It is from the baseline of what is my cost of entry. But then once you start to get into it, this can become more of an outcome driven model.
Outcome for who, though? How are the operators making money? How are people making money?
I'm talking about
Who cares
the
if somebody
customers and the brands, right? So from a customer and a brand perspective, when I go to them, and instead of saying it's going to cost you this much to get from point A to point B, I'm going to say, hey, I can drive this amount of revenue with this message and prove that that's where this came from. And now I have this different model of not only that, but now there is a ton of data that's available also. So now we're taking...
And who owns that data?
That could be owned by the brand. more importantly, right, from a personalization
Could be, should be.
and
What are the rules around it?
It's so from our perspective, when we
You,
are
the people are out
building
in the industry. What are the mobile operators' perspective? Because it's their consumers.
correct. So, but when someone is running through a platform like Native Messages platform, that all lives in my world. That all exists in my universe. So then I have the ability to share that data and that information with my customer around their customer so that they know they like black shirts or their size extra large or they like this kind of shoe or this type of a thing. Once it
You're
backs
like
out
a mini.
of that,
You're like a mini Google.
I wouldn't necessarily use the term Google. I would say that we provide a solution that delivers experiences inside of a new channel while like capturing the data around what's happening in that channel.
So the
Because if you think
the
about
brands are your customers.
the brands are our customers, but we also have customers that are in the telco space also as well. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the demand that we're seeing initially isn't coming from brands per se. It's coming from people in the industry. And how do you enable us to use RCS business messaging with your tools? So there's kind of two different parts, two different pieces to it that are there, because we're going to be in the background, basically providing the infrastructure and the tools for RCS business messaging to take off globally. And at the same time, because we are out there, brands are approaching us, and then we're approaching brands around, how do you use RCS business? How do you use RCS business messaging? So there's different pricing models. There's different ways of doing it.
There's no pricing set. There's no pricing set in the U.S. Let me give you a little good news. Here's a prediction from some really smart people in the industry. Within a year, Google will just take over business messaging, RBM. They'll take it over, and because they've got with them and Apple connecting, they'll just take it over. Because at the end of the day, the financial infrastructure is not set up. They even have vetting, right? So now Google is deferring to the operators for vetting in the USA for messaging, right? There's one company called Aegis. There's only one company in the United States that does vetting. Yep. There's nobody else. There's one guy, right, that does vetting, which is a whole other conversation. But Google already knows who you are. They already have all your information. They already have everything. No, you may want to jump in because I don't want to keep going down a rabbit hole, because a lot of the stuff I learned is from the guys in the industry and our 20,000 subscribers, people in messaging, and we get so much information. So I'm excited about where you're going. But I'd like to turn it over to Noah and Mark and Paul, who are far more, and they know where I'm going with this.
Well, I definitely have some questions, but
not questions, statements.
Well, carriers and those who deal with carriers will look at the transport always.
Yeah,
that's correct. How they make money. So that's in their DNA. In fact, RCS is an over-the-top service anyway, and it shouldn't have to use the carriers, but somehow some deals are made. So it's like all of a sudden having carriers support WhatsApp, right? Because messaging in the OTT place doesn't really, to your point, touch the carriers' networks, but now they're pushing it through the carriers' networks so that they can monetize it.
Yep.
And to Johnny's point, and to one of your earlier points, when it came to carriers getting along and having their kumbaya moment about anything, pricing is one of those very rare things they could ever get along on. In fact, it's like a game of checkers to them, right? They often watch the next person and they're like, oh, we'll jump to that square because look at what they did. Exactly. If everybody jumps too far, they're like, wait, let's jump back one, right? And then they all end up on the same square somehow. But that's not really an intentional game. What I do see a problem is that when you deal with those that are in telecom, they're probably just trying to learn from you. what you have so they can knock you off because they already have the relationship for the transport. Okay. So be very, 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 very careful on that side. New technology is always really interesting to folks, and they want to listen all day long and sponge it all up. And then they vanish and they try and do what you do. So I think on this show or in this group, I'd like to personally hear what you consider your unique selling proposition over others. And if it's what you said earlier, just the speed to adoption, or what do you consider the top maybe 2 reasons folks should work with you as opposed to their directs with a Cinch or a Cineverse or a AT&T or a T-Mobile?
So it's a great question. And one of the other things that I didn't mention is that we are looking at a model where connectivity is an option and not a requirement from our perspective. So that kind of addresses the termination piece. We don't get involved in that.
Okay.
We just simply provide the tools and the solution for enabling RCS business. And based upon the conversations that we're having, so to your point about people reaching out, wanting to know what we're doing, I can name quite a few companies that a year ago were talking to us about RCS business. All of that disappeared, to your point. Now they're out there, RCS business. So that piece, we've seen that. But what we're seeing now is more of a, hey, I do not want to build another piece of software. I do not want to spend any time at all trying to understand this, figure this out, in any way, shape, or form. So can you come in and can you help me understand what this is, what we should do with it, how we should use it, and how we make money from it? Because if there's a situation where I am selling to somebody that's already in telecom, the other thing that RCS Business brings to the table is there's a lot of professional services.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of customer journey building. There's a lot of customer journey mapping. There's copy, there's images, there's all of these other pieces where when we bring in the piece of technology, we're giving them the foundation of being able to do RCS business. And then they have the ability to layer on any different kind of services or any professional services that they want to from that perspective. So at this point, our really very unique selling position is that we are giving customers choice in an industry that is typically doesn't have a lot of choice, i.e., I go to Cinch, I go to Twilio, I go to Infobip, I have to use all their stuff. I have to use their tech stack, I have to use their tools, I have to use everything, versus what if there was another option that was over here that didn't necessarily interfere with the traditional telco model, but moved RCS business forward because now everyone has in their hands the tools to be able to do more than a basic or a rich RCS.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is I can go and get an API. I can send a basic RCS. Great. Whatever. Flip an RCS, flip an SMS. That's all going to happen. That's the first wave. Then the next wave is rich cards, which will get into MMS. And I think that's going to pretty much put MMS to bed for the most part. And then as you go down, people are going to start to see all these experiences like what we share on LinkedIn. And they're going to say, how do I do that?
Yeah.
How do I do reservations? How do I do appointment reminders? How do I move my Shopify store in? How do I connect to Salesforce? How do I push these messages into my Zendesk instance? That is a huge piece of what we're offering also. It is not just simply the ability to send an RCS message. It is the ability to send an RCS message, pull data, push data, integrate into third-party platforms. And then we have all of the emulator. In the US, we actually have that patented from a fallback perspective. So legally, right, We're the only people that are allowed to do that. And we have that built into our platform also. So when customers come to us, you come to me with a bunch of numbers.
Does Google know this?
Does Google know what?
That you have some kind of patent that makes you legally the only guy in town?
Yes.
Really?
My understanding is yes.
Okay. Do they care?
That I don't know. It hasn't ever gotten to a point where there's been any kind of more of a discussion than they're aware of it.
Hey, Mark, you want to jump in for a minute?
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I love the focus on RCS. Well, Michael's got there. You know, that's a definite winner. You had the likes of Cinch and all these other guys who are heavily dependent on their revenues from SMS, and they're trying to grow their OTT revenues. But they're still heavily dependent on their SMS revenues. But you have Michael's business that's come in, and it doesn't have that weakness. It's in that strong position where everything just gets better and better as the demand for their services grow. And that's fantastic as far as growing a business is concerned, as far as having a startup and moving it forward. So that's all great. The point about pricing, Johnny, thanks for picking up my technical credentials, but I do have some commercial, regulatory, and legal credentials.
I know you've been in business,
well.
You built your business, you sold companies. I get it, but
I'm there. Yeah. But okay, you don't want to sell a Rolls Royce and a Volkswagen for the same price. Of course, the operators only know basic pricing, whereas all of us want to. The ideal is to extract a price that equates to the value of what's actually being delivered. You know, if you are facilitating the purchase of a $100 million yacht through RCS, then it'd be nice to get a decent percentage out of that. Whereas if it's just a transaction for buying a can of Coke or a burger or whatever, that's a different situation, or whatever. You get the picture. Obviously, our ideal is, you want to extract the value that you want to price based on the value that the customer's getting from it. And that's absolutely ideal. But telecoms, MNOs, they don't understand that. We don't understand that. It's the sort of businesses that we want to build. It's the sort of business that they want to be, but it's the sort of business that they will never be. Go, Johnny, go for it.
Yeah, no, look, I think you look, I can see you're a fan of his company because he's doing something outside the box. But then you have the other pushing factors, right? I mean, you also have, the same old SMS is easy. It's on everybody's phone. It's already there. So you have these 300 pages. You have all these complications. You got people that don't want to learn. There's definitely a market for what he's doing. But I think that the overall conversation here, and obviously Paul Sweeney's here as well, and he's been using RCS more, Paul, more as a customer standpoint, right?
Oh, you're on mute, Paul. There you go.
Yeah, it's okay. Just put it on mute so there's no background noise.
And I think I'm just going to defer to you from kind of segue from Mark here, because you're using it, I understand now, more practically and getting better benefit, right?
Right. So so we Webio are doing like one-way SMS, then two-way SMS, then the WhatsApp, then the messengers, all driven by conversational AI and focused on the credit collection sector. So it's like a niche fintech type of offer. But we have a lot of experience now of trying to make decisions around, which platform you go with, and is it price? Obviously, price is important when customers are asking about the price. So just to bring it back to the beginning there, about the pricing, it's almost, if you're in a conversation and someone says, "What's the price per message?" You should go back to your sales people and go, "Guys, you came in the wrong door," and it's very hard to steer someone back onto the value conversation when you've gone in the pricing per message door. Like, you should almost kind of go, "Guys, this isn't that conversation." The thing that has been up in the air about pricing is the pricing per session. How long those things are and what can happen in those sessions. And again, that's, to be decided, right? Whether that model works for people or not, or how that might get complicated in multi-day, multi-week conversations, because sometimes, people don't call you and get it done. It's like, hey, I need to go check something and get back to you. The thing about I think that we may be missing in this conversation is just some insights into where value gets actually created and delivered for the enterprise and the end customer in this scenario. So one of the value scenarios is, I just want to know that you are who you say you are. So if you're Sears or Target and you're contacting me about my account and you're asking, did I really buy that thing, or did I want that upgrade or whatever with my account, I'm going to be very reluctant to engage with that unless I can absolutely know it's you, right? So just validating who you are has value, like chargeable value. I'm going to set this up so that we know you are who you say you are. And I think that's often missed in conversations. The ability to just deliver reach. So when you go into the enterprise and you go, hey, you're not just sending out to your Twitter people or your WhatsApps or your web chat. It's like all the customers are addressable in this manner. So let's just hypothesize for a second that everyone gets their stuff in order technically, and you can deliver to 100% of your customer base. The thing that people never really talk about is how you can really simplify your campaigns after that point. I don't have to send out messages, figure out were they delivered, were they the right numbers, did I have the right to send to those numbers, to kind of audit all that. Did anyone respond to that? How did they engage to that? Oh, they didn't. Okay, do I have another channel I'm supposed to contact them on now because they're kind of not responding there? I have a new file, a new campaign, a new thing, right? So just the thing about well, like, again, just to put our cards on the table, like, we're a pretty good conversational AI solution. We're like very, leading edge stuff that's happening. But if you go into a customer, some of the questions you'll get are like, can I reach all my customers? Like, can I reach them? If I don't get them, do they get an SMS? And then what happens? It's like, and then what happens? And then what happens? And if you can just simplify that message and go, hey, it's going to contact all your customers. We have all the data that comes back from that. We automate the follow-ons because we have all the data, again, about how to handle that. It's simplification, 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 right? We underestimate the power of simplification. And the other thing I would say about this whole opportunity is we're here like day and night with WhatsApp conversations, right? Talking about WhatsApp for business, what it can do. The opportunity here is to take WhatsApp off the game, right? Off the board. That's the opportunity. Take WhatsApp off the board. It's like, well, what are you talking about, Paul? It's like, well, WhatsApp are slowly but surely going to corral your customer base and charge you for access to your own customers. Like, that's what's going to happen. You have to have the other channels, and you have to have a strategy for keeping your customer relationships. So there's a longer game here to be played. I think that the telcos are dramatically dropping the ball at every given opportunity. I mean, I was at a conference in 2009 with Dean Bubley, and I remember it was in London, and I remember him saying that there won't be one channel, there'll be multiple channels, fragmented media, fragmented channels. It's your job to stitch all these together, right?
Right.
But if you're selling out there today, you're hearing, yeah, what can you do for me with WhatsApp? Like, that's the conversation that a lot, like most of the enterprises we're talking about, it's like WhatsApp. And so I think the competitive tension between, okay, you're getting that pull for WhatsApp, but you need to build your strategy where you have your ability to directly contact your customers, gather your data, manage your permissions. You need to have all that stuff thought out, or you're going to find yourself in a corner maybe 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, and that's to your point, real quick, like, WhatsApp comes up all the time. There are definite ways to position RCS against WhatsApp that once you get into it, this, Paul, you can explain, like, totally different. This might be on everybody's phone, but it's 2 billion people talking to each other. It's not all of these businesses pushing all of this content in. So there's this misconception about what's really going on with WhatsApp from my limited knowledge and all of that and the understanding of it. But the other part of it is that, like, there is no winner in this game, because to your point, it's going to be all different channels, right? Again, back to price driven SMS.
No, I
all of
think
that.
what he's saying is there is a winner in the game.
There
And the
could
winner
be.
in the game right now is
Well,
WhatsApp. And I'll tell you why. Because I have to download WhatsApp to talk to all my friends in Europe, because everybody uses WhatsApp. So you've got Google RCS coming in. You've got SMS, which is a one-way SMS. And then you've got this whole other elephant in the room that nobody talks about is, why do 3 billion people have WhatsApp? A lot of those people have it so they can talk to people as well. So
Right.
there, it is fragmented. But I think what Paul's saying is, why should WhatsApp take his customers? Why should all these people worry about them taking their customers? And that's a threat. So there is a leading player, and that leading player is, well, obviously SMS is still a leading player, but in what you guys are talking about, what Google's going after, it is clearly WhatsApp. And if you want to go back to identity, and what Paul said, Noah's been working on something now forever, which he's coming out with very soon to help along with that as well. So there's so many moving parts here. I don't know what the whole premise of this podcast was, but it's definitely going in some good directions. But
Well, can I add to that, Johnny? Because I think there's something like the overarching value of RCS, and thank you all for pointing out these elements that all played into this statement I'm about to make, which is you can't look at any channel anymore. You have to look at the value is the outcome. Yeah. The value isn't the process. The value is the outcome. If you can shift the enterprise's view from how they're getting there to the difference of the outcome, then that is something that is measurable for them. Okay. And it dodges all that silly stuff that, when I was consulting before I had to swallow a poison pill of being closer in telecom, I hated that transition. It hurt, when you die inside. Anyway, I would often understand that the value was not in understanding telecom. It was, what can I give them differently at the end of this journey that they wouldn't get if they went with the people they have? So you are a latch on, you are a bolt on, you are not a transport provider. Anybody, I would demark myself from that so fast, because the closer you become to them, the more they're going to want to just absorb some hack job of you, right? So line in the sand to say, listen, bring your own transport or partner with folks. I'll help you with that if you need it, but partner with folks, but don't sell that. That puts you into a pig pen, and there's a lot of swill in there. So stay away from the smelly part and just look at the value. And I think RCS, along with any kind of enhanced communication that brings trust and increased value, should be in a plan for enterprise in their communication strategy as a whole. I don't think they're looking at the privacy rules that they should, and identity management across the board, across all of these channels, because they're all, to Paul's point, they're stealing everything from, they're basically saying, hey, we're going to encrypt stuff from point A to point B, the piece that they keep having you focus on, right? Or the telcos focus on. And they're saying, hey, don't worry, we'll look, it's encrypted. So they're saying, look at these shiny keys. And then really is what's happening is they're mining the data on the beginning and the end of that encryption and decryption. So they have full rights to do this when you sign the privacy terms and conditions with them. So by you supporting these channels, you should be supporting at a hierarchy level, not any individual one. And when I was in consulting, that's the only reason I kept my clients is I supported everything. And you could get one expert here, one expert there, but I could do the whole gamut for them. And that's what they appreciated. So be the expert in the room, not the mule that's carrying the bags.
No, you're 100% spot on. And that's really where we've kind of, it's where everything is taking us, because we're really paying attention to the signals, everything that's coming in, all the conversations we're having. What are people saying? What are people telling us? Where are the real opportunities? Where is all of that coming from? And that's really where, this whole idea of choice and really coming at it from a different angle. So it's a different conversation. So then we don't look like, we look like this. And we're our own separate, unique thing that people are like, well, wow, like, what is that all about? Like, that's different. How does that work? And that, I think, is a lot of why we are having conversations that are continuing versus one like, oh, hey, yeah, we'll get back to you in 6 months. Like now we have a call, and then the call scheduled the next week, and then the next week, and then the next week. Like these are moving very, very quickly because, and again, it gets back to where's the money, which we're all talking about. And if there's no money, it's very difficult to allocate resources, time, energy, effort, and people to go and do that. And then you have, as I mentioned earlier, the lunatics and the crazy guys here who decided to go all in and create just this platform that is very mature, very extensive. We've already been running campaigns. Some of the campaigns we've been running in Canada across the board are seeing a doubling of click-through rates. We're seeing click-through rates increase as high as the one was 339%. I know everything's always an even number, but nothing is ever an even number. So 339%. So it works. And then it's the education and the awareness piece. We always say we're selling the category, not native message. That's been a lot. Obviously, as you guys know, nobody makes money selling the category. So that's been a tremendous amount of fun as well. But we're getting to the point now where you are going to start to see some announcements from us around some of these conversations that we're having. I've never signed more NDAs in my life than I have during this process over the last 6 months. But very excited for a lot of this stuff to come to life and really, just change the conversation. It's the same thing. Oh, I can't tell you how many times, how much is the message? How much is the message? How much is the message?
Speaking of changing the conversation,
all that.
I definitely want to change the conversation and move off to this. Because first of all, I think you should give Alan Quayle the #1 Superman comic book that he doesn't have as a payment for having Paul Sweeney, Mark Hay, and Noah Rafalco, all successful entrepreneurs that have built businesses, sold businesses, and are groundbreaking. You should probably put them on your advisor list. But while I have Mark Hay here, I want to shift the conversation because I've been trying to get him, and I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity. Mark, what are your thoughts on the overall success rate of RCS? Obviously, you've been down the road, you sold companies, you're out there. I read your stuff, even though you ignore me half the time. So I got you now. So why don't you tell me what's really going on here? What is Mark Hay thinking? And I'm sorry, Michael, to go into a different topic, but this is a podcast in itself. I've been trying to get this guy. Mark.
Okay, cool. Michael, great stuff. Absolutely fantastic stuff. You will do amazing. Absolutely amazing. Just keep focused on the RCS and you'll get there, especially if you're focused and everyone else is distracted with other bits and pieces. Johnny, so RCS. What I've said to Michael is completely spot on. That's fantastic. RCS, I am troubled and worried. Obviously, you might have seen the other day that a certain high-up exec from Cinch was jumping up and down about the fact that end-to-end encryption's just come in UP3 and et cetera, et cetera. Then one of his payment guys, one of his sales guys jumped up and down about, oh, this will be great. I'll be able to enable payments, et cetera, et cetera. The end-to-end encryption is for person to person. It's not for chatbot scenarios. The I just feel there's either a little bit of trying to be generous to people again here, a little bit of foolishness, we'll say, going on, or there's a bit of disinformation going on, a little bit of deception that is there to try and make RCS look to be more than it actually is. It's pulling in messages from the periphery or the relevant periphery of RCS to try and promote your RBM offering. And that's completely wrong. These guys should know better. It's possible that this particular gentleman did not know better. He should know better, though. But given he's one of the founders, anyway, let's not go there. So,
well, I want to go. I want to go there real quick because I picked up on your comments there. And look, you got a company that's trading half times revenue on the market. Their whole story is RCS, right? They're dead. They're dead in the water. They got 1 billion outstanding shares. As far as they're concerned, it's Willy Wonka land. So we're Willy Wonka. RCS is, this is the chocolate factory. We're making it. We're going forward. I think that reverts back to not being uneducated. I think it's keeping the hype going, keeping the narrative going.
Oh, yeah.
And then when there's smart people like you going, hey, wait a minute, it's not encrypted end to end. And then you got this company Wire putting out, that's another Scipio Partners FinTech company. I don't know if you know. They come out and put out a link saying we're the only encrypted end to end messaging platform in the world. And the guy from Matrix like, wait a minute, guys. I think you're wrong here. So there is a lot of fake news running around. I hate to use that word, but there's no other real news. But it's not so much fake news, Mark, as I think it is just people being lost. I think the compression of people losing money in the SMS business with one-time passwords, I think it's all coming full circle. So you have this exciting thing called RCS, which everybody has to hop on. Their revenues are drying up in SMS, but SMS is not going away. What, a 2 trillion SMS sent a year? That's not completely going away. Not ever. I wanted to get your idea in your mind, because I know Robert Viz came on and he basically said one day it'll all disappear. Then he came back at another short and goes, I'm not so sure this is going to work. The operators aren't really working together. Do you believe, and I'm looking at it more from a U.S. standpoint, because do you actually believe, because the USA has 3 operators, do you believe it will be successful here as they want, which is basically take it all?
RCS, home of Google. I think it'll do better in North America than it will in Europe, given the dominance of, as you say, Europeans like WhatsApp. A wee bit about WhatsApp. There was an Ofcom survey, published the other week, along with the market review into A2P SMS. The survey respondents were less trusting of WhatsApp than they were of SMS. Work that one out. But and this was on numerous questions. They preferred to receive SMS from public and private organizations via SMS compared to receiving it via WhatsApp. So WhatsApp, well, we shouldn't underestimate it. Don't overestimate the threat from WhatsApp. And people will jump up and down about WhatsApp because they know about WhatsApp. Most people have it on their phones, or a lot of people have it on their phones, but it's not perceived. It's not as big a threat as people might think. It's still a threat, but it's not as big a threat. RCS, as Dean had said a good number of years ago, one of the guys brought up, things are going to remain fragmented for a very long time. RCS is not going to have 100%. It will never have RCS. In fact, I find RCS very disappointing. That's my personal opinion on it. It's, you think, all the years that have gone by since SMS was created, and this is what we've come up with. Fantastic, absolutely tremendous, but it's what we've got. So from a business perspective, it's what we've got, it's what we've got to work with, and there are opportunities there for sure to create some very successful stories and for businesses to get an awful lot out of it. Exactly. But it might well be more successful in North America than Europe. So far, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lock in the USA. I think Google's going to come in, take it over, kick back the carriers, because the carriers made that deal. They don't really care about messaging. And then they're just going to farm the data. And it depends who's in political power. Then they'll get caught with their hand in all these different cookie jars. So if you think about it, you got WhatsApp, you got Zuckerberg, you got Google, you got these guys controlling all the information flow.
They have the power to make it happen.
Yeah. They have the power and the money.
Yeah.
But I think internationally, I don't think it's going to work in certain countries, but I think SMS is not going anywhere.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to whatever's going to replace it.
What they did was smart at Google. They would go to countries that are poor, and they'd say, hey, let us support your messaging. Look how rich and beautiful it is. We'll just replace your whole SMS infrastructure with RCS. And they did.
That's the UK. Yeah, it's the UK.
Well, I
wonder why they got into Apple's pocket, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I got a theory.
Nudge, nudge.
When a country's charging 30 cents a text message, I got a theory that it's partly fueled by Google saying, here, jack the price is so high that nobody will send it, and then it'll go the other way. So
well, just look at it, Johnny. Everybody's pushing down, okay? So what I mean by that is everybody's pushing down to the consumer like they own the consumer, okay? Oh, look at how we can woo them this time and woo them that time with this tech or that tech, not realizing that there's this tremor coming up from the bottom up. And that changes all of these channels when the consumer controls their own privacy. Because all these things may dry up because the reason they exist is not to give you bells and whistles. It's to bring you to the island of fun and turn you into a donkey. Should have listened to Geppetto. That's all I'm going to say.
We're going to have to draw a line under this because we've run long, but this...
I think you've got two separate podcasts. I think you've got the Michael Land podcast, and I think, having these guys here, until they tell me they're leaving, I don't think we should leave, because to have this kind of talent on this podcast...
We're going to do this again. We're going to do this again.
How are you going to get these guys on? You got to get all three of you.
Yes,
not getting it. All right, guys, I'll see you next year, guys.
Yeah. We are going to do another one because there is
too much talent. Too much talent on this podcast,
man. Like, I think a discussion between Paul and Michael in terms of how that would work out in enabling.
No, Michael's got a great business. It's exciting. It's great. It's great to see him to not have the baggage. I think, as Mark pointed out, he doesn't have the baggage that a Cinch and Infobet and those have. It gives him a huge advantage going forward. But as far as the conversation that people really want to know, which is the conversation we're having with Mark and with Noah, and just the practicality of RCS, where it's going to work, where it's not going to work,
and Paul,
and where's the
great example? Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. And, I think that diving more into depth there. But anyway, guys. This has been fun. It's going to be tough to get this summarized, but I'm going to get it done today and get it out because this is important. And Michael, this is going to be the first of many because I think this conversation was very insightful. I've learned a lot, and I think the market needs to understand the importance of what you're doing. When we first chatted, I was like, I get it. I love because I was asking you as a developer, how do I get this, how do I use this? Of course, you've got the no code, which, again, music to my ears, make it so easy for people to build that and then to own that using your technology for those apps to just sit in the phone. But anyway.
And I want to point out the most impressive thing about Michael. Michael came on here with arguably three of the smartest guys in the industry, and allowed them to pick and poke and put eyes around things. Nobody does that. So, Michael, you get, guts of the year. There's not very few people would come on here with these guys.
No, and I appreciate that. And the bottom line is that I didn't get to where I am by walking around like this, right? I have to listen to people. I have to understand what's going on. That is the whole, right? You build a business, but the business isn't for you. It's for them.
Yes.
And you have to listen to them and you have to understand where they're going. And that is a lot of what we've been doing over the last 18 months is educating on the category, but also listening. What are people talking about? Where are their issues? What are they concerned about? Really, where is the pain? What part is creating it?
Yep.
And then really focusing in on that. So,
and then you got to get one of these hats. Then you got to get one of these hats, Michael, and then you're golden. Once you get one of these, you're a home run.
You know what? I have a native message hat, and that's enough for me.
That's
right
enough.
Now. That's enough.
Again, thank you so much, guys.